Hello everybody. This has been a very long time since I've done one of these sit-downs, and it's been a long time in coming actually, because I've been saying all along that I was going to do a review of 4 different deck builders, 3 of which I have featured on my channel, and one of which I have played several times, but I've never made a video of because it just, I just didn't have the time. It just wasn't the right time, and it also wasn't as exciting a game that I, felt I would have to do a video on it. So the 4 deck builders I would like to talk to you about today are Legendary Encounters Alien, Thunderstorm Advance Numenera, Lord of the Rings, the LCG by Fantasy Flight Games, and the Pathfinder Adventure card game by Paizo, and for that one I chose the Wrath of the Righteous expansions. I haven't played any of the other expansions for the Pathfinder Adventure card game, so any comments that I will make and can make are for this particular expansion, the most recent one alone. And I'm going to not even try to discuss and ascertain if these are real deck builders, because I've seen threads on Board Game Geek where people were saying, oh no, this is not a deck builder, because unless you have the possibility of actually thinning out your deck, if there isn't a mechanism in your game that will allow you to get rid of cards, for example, in Alien Legendary Encounters, you can't get rid of cards. You can't get rid of cards in the Pathfinder Adventure card game, but you can get rid of cards in the Thunderstone Advance series. If you can't do that, then it's not a deck builder. I will not ever go to these lengths and discuss it at that level, because I think to me that is completely academic and it really doesn't add to the discussion in my view. So I will just focus on these games, and I will start out with Thunderstone Advance Numenera. This is incidentally based on a game by Monty Cook, on a role-playing game by Monty Cook. Now Thunderstone Advance is the sequel to Thunderstone. I've never played Thunderstone, and in the Thunderstone Advance series I've only ever played Numenera. Thunderstone Advance is out of print, which I find really sad, because I would have wanted to get one of their high fantasy expansions, but it's just not available for love or money, which tells you that obviously it must have been quite successful when it came out, because people who have it seem to hold on to it and are not willing to part with it. So I played Thunderstone Advance Numenera. I only have the German version, which is which was brought out by Pegasus Spiele, and I bought it for 15 euros. It was in shrink, but it was basically at a knockoff price. The idea is that in Thunderstone Advance, you play a generic hero type. You get a couple of generic weapons, and you choose either one of the adventures in the booklet, which tells you what kind of cards to put into your deck and what kind of cards to put into your village deck, where you can basically go shopping, find allies, find new weapons, or advance your characters. Or you can just use the very neat randomizer functionality that comes with the game. So basically you've got randomizer cards, and you basically choose from them which kind of monsters you want to fight. There are different levels of monsters, and then you build the monster deck, as you might want to call it, and you build it in such a way that the most difficult monsters come at the bottom, and then the less difficult monsters and the easiest ones come on top. And then you populate the village, which you can either build yourself, or you can use the village that is available and comes as a board, if you will, with the actual game. Apparently the German edition only has a cardboard version, flimsy cardboard, but I also saw an American version where somebody had a thick cardstock version of the plan. You basically lay it out, and then the way this works is you can either play it against other people. There are mechanisms in it that make it more difficult for other people to attack certain monsters that you have marked in some way. I've only played it on my own. You can play it solo, no problem. And the way this works is you draw a card from the villain deck and you put it into the villain display. It works like a staging area. And you can then choose to attack it using your weapons, or your spells, or both, or your allies if you've got them. Or you can choose not to attack it, but to go into the village to buy stuff. So you buy stuff by using values on the cards that you get, and then you can exchange these for things that you would like to buy. And everything that you pay goes into your discard pile, and then you draw back to your hand size. And if you do not decide to fight, what happens is a new monster is added, and the monster that's already there is coming closer and closer. So it's basically encroaching on the village, and if it gets into the village, terrible things happen. So the way the fighting works is that they've got this idea of light and darkness. So the further at the beginning of the monster track a monster is, the darker the place where it's hiding is. So basically you need not only to match its fighting value, but you also have to bring light with you. Now there are torches, very simple light, but there are also sometimes weapons that will give you light, spells that will give you light, and sometimes even a monster that you slay, because slain monsters go into your discard pile, and when you then reshuffle your pile to draw again, they end up in your pile and they can dilute it because you're actually looking for good cards and you're not getting any because your pack gets bigger and bigger. Or sometimes they give you bonuses like light, for example, and if let's say something is at light 4, you need to have 4 light to cancel out the darkness effect, or you add these numbers of lights that the monster is hiding in, the levels of light that the monster is hiding in, you add it to the actual value of the monster. So if a monster is, let's say, fight 10, and if it's hiding at level 4 and you have no light, you would have to meet 14 to actually do something about it from a combat perspective. And so you go through the deck, the monsters start encroaching, you try to fight them, you try to go to the village, you try to level up your heroes, you try to buy more powerful weapons, and at some point you either win or the monsters win because they overrun the place. It's, I think, easily set up because of the randomizer. Its mechanics are very simple. You also draw Thunderstones, which are little plastic chits when you win against a monster, and they can give you certain attributes, they can give you certain help and make it easier for you to do certain things. But you know, this is not the main part of the mechanic, and also it doesn't seem to be available in all Thunderstone advanced versions. This seems to be something that isn't available in all of them. And it's I guess it's a nice game. It's not terribly complicated. I really would have liked to play the high fantasy version because the Numenera universe is one where fantasy meets science, so you have kind of like some of the beings that you fight are kind of robotic. You know, it's a little bit of a weird scenario. I have never read up on Numenera and its world, so I can't tell you more about it. But you know, I would have preferred a fantasy type experience simply because it would be more interesting to me. But having said this, the mechanic would be the same as I understand it. And for what it's worth, I mean, I only paid €15 for it, which is about $10. So that was fair. And it's sitting on my shelf. I'm looking at it now. I will probably at one point take it out again, but you know, it's an okay game, and it's probably a game that you could try and get the casual player to play. Because there is no commitment to it. You don't have to think about your deck building, you don't have to devise strategies, it's all randomized. So it's an okay game, which you can use with a casual player as well. Next up is Legendary Encounters Alien by UDE. And this is a huge box which comes with, I believe, more than 600 cards. It's huge, it's heavy, and it comes with a player mat, which is part and parcel of the game. Now, the Alien Legendary Encounters game is based on the Alien movies franchise, and what it does is it takes the first movies, so Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, and it takes characters from these 4 movies and events from these 4 movies and puts them into a card game. Now, the card game can be played solo, it can be played cooperatively, but there's also a player versus player mode, which, as far as I understand, involves you actually playing an alien. I've never tried that because I play all of my games on my own, and also I have zero interest in player versus player. I suck at player versus player. I suck at talisman. When I have to use a card that actually hurts another player, I'm kind of like, oh my god, this is, I scream externally, actually. So I can't really talk about those modes at all. When I do play it, and I love the game, I actually play two-handed, so I play with 2 characters. Now, the characters themselves that you can play, you can't play Ripley, you can't play Ash. Who would like to play Ash? I mean, Ash is a psychopathic robot, nobody wants to play Ash. You can't play Dallas, you can't play Higgs, you can't play Newt. You know, you can play generic characters. They're even called the medic, the grunt. They don't have, they're faceless. One is even called the corporation, I believe. They are completely generic. They don't even have names. They're really also just called avatars. So you basically choose them randomly, or you make a selection what you would like, and then everybody gets the same starting hand with 2 types of cards. Grunts, and I don't know what the others are they called specialists? I don't know, but they have different values. Some you can use for recruiting and some you can use for fighting, and then you build the HQ, where you put in the cards that actually contain player characters. So you have different types of Ripleys, you have different types of Dallases, you've got different types of Higgses, and so on and so forth. Now, the way I play it, because I'm old-fashioned, is I play by canon. So the Ripleys that I play with when I play Alien are the Ripleys from Alien. They're not the Ripleys from Alien Resurrection or Aliens or Alien 3. Captain Dallas only appears when I play the first scenario. I would never use his cards in later scenarios, although you can. And you're invited to do this, and some people do. So in theory, you could have a deck full of Ripleys only from the 4 different movies, although that would probably be less entertaining. I don't know, I haven't tried. And you have the so-called, like hive deck, I believe it's called, and that's where all of the aliens reside, and you have to build this as well, because the game is played in stages. So the most difficult stage is the last one, and then the second difficult stage comes second, and then on top is the easiest stage. And you put in all of your enemies, you put in all of the events that can happen, and you get objectives that you have to fulfill. And that's very different from Thunderstone Numenera, because not only are there enemies that will attack you, but you also have to achieve stuff. So, for example, one of the things you have to do in the first scenario is you have to you have to trap the enemy in the airlock. So you have to attach 2 cards, which you have to find, to the airlock when the airlock is empty. So the airlock is actually one slot where the monster cards appear one after the other until they hit the central spot, in which case they will attack you. So while they're still approaching, they can't attack you, or they won't really. I think none of them will attack you, and basically you have them there. And yeah, I've got a kitten here who got shaved yesterday, and she hates the world now. basically what you've got there is you've got the monsters approaching, and the actual player mat that you get with the game is part and parcel of the game. You cannot play the game, in my opinion, without it. It's beautifully done, and it is an interactive player mat. And the game is very immersive, in my opinion. It's got interesting objectives. It's got terrible events. Events are never good. And it's got shocking moments. I mean, I remember the first time a card hit the central space. So basically all of the enemies that you get are face down. So you don't know what you're drawing. It could be an enemy or it could be something else. And the something else that entered my central space one day when I turn it over is Jonesy the cat. And when Jonesy makes it to the central stage, you have to kill the card. You kill the cat. That was horrible. And I read a thread one time where somebody said, and there was the four of us sitting there with our beers, and then we draw the card, it comes into the central space, and it's Newt. We just killed Newt. We were stunned. You know, that's what actually happens in this game, and that's what I love about the game, because it is very cathartic. I mean, killing Newt or killing Jonesy, that'll make grown men cry. The game mechanisms are very simple. You draw from the Fiend deck and you add cards to the staging area, and the cards come closer and closer and closer, and you try to balance what you can do per round between recruiting new cards, so cards that will help you, and fighting enemies. But not only do you have to fight them, what you also have to do is you have to spend money, if you like, on scanning the rooms where the cards reside. So scanning the room means you turn over the card to see what it actually is, and then you have to make a decision what you're going to do with it. Just turning the card over doesn't mean it will attack you, but at least you get an idea of what's there. But usually when you scan a room, you won't have enough money left, or not enough value cards left to actually do something about it and to fight it. And basically when you play a card, you discard it, and then you draw up to your full hand size, and then once you've drawn everything from your draw deck, you take your discard pile and you shuffle it back in, and then you keep drawing from there. So this is a game which is actually for people of 17 and up, because some of the artwork is kind of gruesome. Especially, and the face huggers are just beautifully done. I mean, the artwork, I like it, although I have to say it is, as somebody remarked, quite eclectic. Some characters, you look at the card and you kind of go, oh yeah, that looks exactly like Sigourney Weaver. And then you look at another one, you kind of go, that doesn't look like, that's supposed to be Call? No. Doesn't look like her at all. So it doesn't look like Winona Ryder, I mean. Sometimes it seems that there was a lot of discussion around people giving permission to have their likeness used in the game. So apparently the actress who plays Vasquez in the second movie said no. So her likeness wasn't used, but Sigourney Weaver, I don't know if she was actually asked at all, because I was talking to a friend of mine about this who knows a little bit about copyright, saying, if you want to draw Ripley, can you make her look like Sigourney Weaver? Because Ripley is a character, but she looks like Sigourney Weaver because Sigourney Weaver played her in 4 consecutive films. So if I say I would like to draw a picture of Ripley, can I just draw a picture of a woman who looks like Sigourney Weaver but wears Ripley's outfit? Or would that mean I'm actually drawing a picture of Sigourney Weaver, for which I would need her permission? We never got to the end of the argument because we just decided we didn't know. But apparently Vasquez, or I think, is her name Jeanette Goldstein, said she didn't want her likeness to be used. But maybe Sigourney Weaver couldn't say no, because it's such an iconic look that she gave Ripley that, if you're going to make a game about Alien, the movie franchise, and you bring in the Ripley character and she looks different from what Sigourney Weaver looks like, nobody would buy it. Nobody would go, okay, yeah, I can live with that because she's so iconic. It's like having a Terminator and it doesn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody would go, that's not the Terminator, that's I don't know what that's supposed to be. The game itself is very fast-paced. I find it terribly immersive, and I've had more than one internal and external scream while playing going, oh my god! And I really enjoyed it, and it is one of the games for which I would have loved to get an expansion. However, it seems like Upper Deck have decided to make an expansion and bring it out this year, which is focused on player versus player, where by all accounts the purpose is to play as the alien queen against others. I have zero interest in this. First of all, I usually play on my own, and secondly, like I said, player versus player just isn't my thing. So if this really turns out to be true, I will give this one a miss, although I would have loved to have it. But it's one of the ones where I have to say, although I'm a collector, I love having complete sets of things, of games, but only if I really believe I will be playing this game. And I know for a fact, if this is a player versus player expansion, if there, let's say, if there are 400 cards in the expansion and 200 are additional cards for the cooperative style, I'll get it. But if there's like 50 for the cooperative style and 350 for the new style, player versus player playing the alien queen, zero interest, won't buy it. So that's the second game I was going to discuss. The next game I'm going to discuss is called the Pathfinder Adventure card game, PACG. And I'm going to discuss the Wrath of the Righteous expansion, which is the most recent one. There were, I think, 2 previous ones. And it came out last year, so it came out as a big box. And Fantasy Flight, get this, they've got a box insert which actually allows you to sort your cards, just like Thunderstone Advanced Numenera has. It is possible, you just have to want to do it. And you can then buy small deck expansions, and I think there is 7 that you can buy. I think I bought 2 and then I stopped. Although I'm a collector and I will probably get the other ones, I have not been as faithful to this game as I would want to be. Now, the Pathfinder Adventure card game is based off of the Pathfinder role-playing game by Paizo, which in turn is based on Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 and is very, very successful. And the idea behind it is to make it possible for people to play a role-playing game without a game master, completely based on cards. So, good idea. So basically what you do is you choose a group of adventurers, so 3 characters, you have different types of characters, different classes, and they all have a name. You don't get to name them, but they are named for you. And each of them has a character stats card, things that they can do. And you use, and that's very important, you use dice. So not only do you play cards, but you also roll dice. So it is a very, very dice-heavy game. You need several types of dice, I can tell you this for nothing. They, I think, provide you with a set of 8 different types of dice, but it's safe to say you need more than that. You need more than that, and you then go out and you fight monsters. So basically everyone gets a basic training, so they get a basic set of cards, weapons, spells, blessings, depending on what your class is, you might get different things. So if you're a spellcaster, you'll probably not get any weapon, but you might get a lot of spells. But if you don't have any magical ability, you won't get spells. So you will get weapons or what have you. And then you go through scenarios. This is scenario based, and scenarios, or scenario, the word sounds grand, but what it actually is it's a mechanic that unfortunately has a theme pasted onto it, and not very well. So, for example, on the Wrath of the Righteous, you go to the World Wound, where all of the demons come into the world, and it's all horrific, and you're trying to, stop that from happening. So one scenario might be that you're trying to understand what's going on. So you start off with the first adventure series, and it comes, let's say, with 6 different quests that you have to fulfill, and you have to fulfill them in a certain order. You can't just pick and choose, but you have to follow the path. It's an adventure path that you start from A and then you move to Z over time. And what you do is you seed. So basically you have different locations in the quest. Let's say there's an abattoir, there is a crypt, there is a cathedral, and each of these then gets a certain amount of cards. I think it's always 8 cards plus a villain card. And these cards are drawn from different types of cards. You've got blessings, you've got spells, you've got weapons, you've got items, you've got armor, and I think there is a 7th that I'm forgetting. And of course, then there might also be one or the other monster. And you can tell as the player what kind of location you're encountering by looking at the kind of cards that are in it. You can see that when you're playing. So if you, and sometimes, you know, the name of the location may be a dead giveaway. If it's the Holy Cathedral, then you will find probably quite a lot of blessing cards and maybe no fiends or very few enemies. And if it's the magician's laboratory, you might find a lot of spells. And if it's the abattoir, you might find a lot of dead people. And a butcher, possibly. And you can tell by looking at the actual card list what kind of cards you are likely to encounter. And then what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go there. So basically you put your character card there and say character 1 goes there. And you then start encountering cards, i.e. you start drawing. And you may draw a card, and let's say it's a spell, and you can acquire this card by trying to pass a test. So if it's a spell, it could be a wisdom or an intelligence-based test. And it says, okay, intelligence 10, your intelligence is 5, but you get to roll a die, and then you try to match it, and then you can acquire the card, and it goes into your discard pile. And then once your draw pile is exhausted, you shuffle again. No, you actually don't. Once you can't draw any cards anymore, you're actually dead. So basically, you can acquire cards, and you can also get back cards. And this is very important. Your draw deck is your lifeblood. Once you've drawn all of your cards and you can't draw anymore, you're dead. Every time you fight and you're attacked and you take a wound, you have to discard cards from your hand. And you can't get your discard pile back unless you use certain spells which allow you this, or certain abilities that characters might have. So your draw pile is actually part and parcel of your lifeblood. So it's a nice way of using life points and actually dying. And the idea is that you put together a party like this was a role-playing game, and the party has to stay the same. But as you go through the game, you acquire more, hopefully you acquire more powerful spells, more powerful weapons, and then you can keep those, but discard the old ones, the ones that are basic, you know. So let's say you have a number of cards that you can have in your deck, let's say 10 weapons, 10 is maybe a little bit too many, but 5 weapons, for example, and you start out with 5 clubs. And then you get this magical sword. So next time round, you get rid of one of your clubs and you keep the magical sword. You can also trade items between the members of your party. But you're technically not allowed to take anything from the box that isn't a basic item that you haven't really acquired. So when you do a test, let's say you encounter this great spell and you want to take it and you fail the test, the spell card goes into the box and you're not allowed to take it until the next time you by chance encounter it and then hopefully get it. So that's how this game works. So it's really an old school meat grinder, getting your treasure card game, role-playing game. And it also has a very interesting mechanic. When you look at the actual characters, they have different abilities. So for example, hand size can vary, strength can vary, and so on and so forth. And as you go through the quests, sometimes you're instructed to level up. So you basically change one of your basic stats, and you do this by writing on the character card. I mean, that's like why would I want to write on my card? You know, who came up with that stupid idea? So the first thing I did was, of course, I copied them so that I had, like, you know, something to write on, because I would never ever write on the actual cards that come with the game, you know. And basically what you then do is you advance your character. If your character dies, or one of your characters, or all of your characters die, you have to redo the quest. You can't proceed. Well, I mean, of course you could, but technically you're not allowed to. So it is really this linear quest that you follow. And up until the game that I played, the quest that I played, there was no variation. There are no events. There are no mechanical ideas that change the way the game plays. So it's basically, you build your location decks, you go in, you encounter the cards, you roll your die. Whoops, I didn't acquire the magic blade. It goes back into the box. Maybe next time when I build a location, it comes up again, and maybe next time I will be able to get it. Oops, there's a fiend. Oops, let's kill it. Oops, there's another enemy. Let's kill that one. Oops, I lose life points. And you do this over and over and over and over. And like I said, I played through several quests and the pattern didn't change. And that did bother me. I was not enjoying myself because it was too linear and too narrow and too rinse, repeat. Rinse, repeat. And when I compare it to the Alien deck builder, they have events. I mean, okay, these events are not really as, you know, varied as they are maybe in the Lord of the Rings, because the Lord of the Rings has many more expansions that add spice to it, but at least they had a couple of events in there, and they could have put in some events in there as well. They're trying to tell an RPG-like story, so it's called Wrath of the Righteous. You know, you could come up with loads of flavor ideas and then just put in a couple of cards or change a mechanism here or there, just to keep keep it interesting. Now, they might have done this in later small package expansions. I don't know, because I haven't bought them, so I can only talk about the first two, I think, boxes that I played. But it wasn't enough to hold my interest, and I really wanted to like this game. I really did, because I thought it was neat. I love RPGs, and I thought, hey, here I can play an RPG by myself. I've got my characters. Okay, they're not named by me, but they're named by the game. But I could, come up with my own characters. And it's like, this idea of progression, and you're staying together, and you're moving through this, and you have this idea of togetherness and a party. And it was like my old days when I was playing RPGs on my computer, where you select your party and you just send them off, like, I don't know, the Dungeons and Dragons by TSR, the Bard's Tale, Pool of Radiance, those games, or Das Schwarze Auge as well, those three games. I felt like that, but it just wasn't in the game. It just wasn't. Now you might ask, why then is she going? Why did she pledge for Apocrypha if this is a game that has the same mechanics as PACG? Because PACG is actually based on the Apocrypha mechanic. Only they couldn't sell Apocrypha to Paizo, so now they're doing it as a Kickstarter, and there are videos on my channel about Apocrypha, because Apocrypha seems to be more. And it seems to have additional stuff, and because I like the theme. So I could have ended up spending $160 for a game that I will absolutely hate, but I just don't think so. I just think there will be more to it, which will make it more enjoyable for me. But PACG, Wrath of the Righteous, meh. No. No. Somehow it just doesn't catch my interest. And now I come to the one that I like probably the best of all four. Alien coming in a close second. And that is the Lord of the Rings and the LCG by Fantasy Flight Games. I don't even know when the first edition came out. But I know that they're still going strong, that they're still producing content. There are still at least 2 big box sets coming out for the last part of the Lord of the Rings, the actual saga. And they're also producing small adventure packs for the most recent deluxe expansion, which came out earlier this year. And of course, there are the Nightmare games. And if you were to buy it all, you would probably be paying hundreds and hundreds of euros. I know, because I have, and I just basically placed another order yesterday, and when this order comes in, then at least I'll be completely caught up on the actual game and a couple of Nightmare decks and a couple of standalone decks as well. And of course, I don't even want to mention how much I'm paying for sleeving. Now, the Lord of the Rings is again different from the other games by virtue of the fact that I believe a lot of the game actually happens while you're not playing the game. And you may go, what is she talking about? Because while I don't know how deck building is officially defined, this is a game where you have to build a deck. And you do this before you play. Now, the way the Lord of the Rings, the LCG, works is that you have, at least at the beginning, until I would say probably Overhill, Underhill, the Hobbit saga, you have 4 spheres of influence. You've got the lore sphere, you've got the tactics sphere, you've got the leadership sphere, and you've got the spirit sphere. Tactics is very simple. That's where the guys with the hammers and the swords come in. So your average dwarf, Gimli, Tarlin, you know, they are tactics guys. And then you've got the spirit guys. They're kind of like, you know, oh my God, let's look at the stars. And then you've got the lore guys. They kind of will look at the herbs and kind of go, oh yeah, well, I can see it on the wind. And then you've got the leadership guys like Aragorn, you know, let's get this going. I know my sword is broken, but I'm still your guy. So basically, it's a very crude if you like, taxonomy, but it does work. It means that you have different types of abilities that people belonging to these spheres have. And each sphere comes with player cards out of which you can build your deck. So there are allies, there are events, there are attachments like swords, but also like jewelry that can give you certain benefits, like it can also be an event, like hasty stroke, which you can use to mitigate some game mechanic. It can be armor, it can be all kinds of things. And basically what you have to do is you have to think about what you want to do with your deck. So you have your heroes. Some of them are from the game, some of them are from the books and from Tolkien's universe. Some are actual FFG created characters. And then you have to make a decision what kind of characters you would like to have in your party. Because characters usually also have, heroes I should say, have really interesting abilities. Some of them are very useful, some of them are less useful. Some of them are only useful when you combine them with other heroes. Some of them are only useful for particular quests, but not for others. Very interesting. So basically what you do is you build your deck how you feel today. You know, today I'm a dwarf, so I'm going to build a deck with only dwarf heroes and only dwarf allies. And as you buy more and more packages of adventure cards, you can actually get to a level where you can have a complete dwarf-only pack, dwarf-only deck. That doesn't mean that a deck will be terribly successful, but in theory you could do it. You can also build an eagle deck. You can also build a deck only with characters from Rohan. You can only build Gondor decks. You can build all kinds of different decks. You can build elven decks, you know. There are cards that will only influence Noldor elvish character cards, allies and heroes, you know. It's a complete universe. It's incredibly detailed. And then what you do is you build your quest deck. So basically that is the adventure deck, and you have locations, you have enemies, you've got treachery cards, events, that kind of thing. You put it down, you have quest stages that you have to go through. Some of them will modify what you're allowed to do. So for example, in the Dol Guldur, in the Escape from Dol Guldur, during the first, I believe, 2 stages of the game, you're only allowed to play 1 ally per round. Not per player, but per round. So if you play with 4 players, you can still only play 1 ally. Usually you're not limited in the amount of allies that you can play. The only thing that limits you is the amount of money that you have to spend on your cards, because you know they're called resources. And there are also ways to increase the amount of resources available to you. For example, there's a card called Steward of Gondor. Whoever gets this card attached to them becomes the Steward of Gondor and gets 2 extra resources, which is really important. So you really want to have that card. And so what you do is you go through your deck, you draw 7 cards, 6 and then +1 at the beginning of the game, and then you start playing. And then after each round, you get to draw 1 more card, unless there's a card effect which disallows you from drawing cards, or which allows you to draw more than the cards that you usually draw. And you can also mitigate some of these things, because there are cards that will allow you to draw more. You also exhaust characters, so once a character has been committed to doing one thing, they can't usually do another unless they have a special ability, or unless you add a card effect to it, or whatnot. And so you basically move through the game. So there's the quest phase where you basically go and, well, the way I envisage it is everybody starts running around and, like looking for whatever it is that you're looking for. If it's a find Gollum quest, then everybody's running around and looking for tracks, and some people might be on the lookout going, oh, is there an orc patrol over there? We might want to be careful. Or look over there, that's a treacherous swamp, don't go there. Things like that. So a lot of this, of course, goes on in my head. It doesn't really go on when I look at the cards, but the cards themselves are, first of all, extremely well drawn. The art is beautiful throughout. I haven't found a card that I thought was like, who drew this? Some of the art is quite frightening, especially I find in Overhill, Underhill, but the artwork in general is really beautiful. And it's very immersive and very evocative. And then, of course, you have flavor text on some of the cards, and the cards, for example, you can go and play, oh, an enemy, kill it. Oh, a treachery card, negate it. Oh, a location card, travel there. Or you can also go, oh, Amon Llao, it's a mountain. Let's climb that mountain. You can also be as immersive about it as you would like to be, or you can just do it very mechanically. And I know people, and there are YouTube videos of people who play really mechanically, enemy, location, treachery, event. And then other people who will really sit there and read out the flavor text and will kind of go through the journey. So you can play it both ways. You can only play it cooperatively. I don't think that there is any way you could play it against another player. At least I haven't seen any way of playing against another player. If there is, then I've obviously completely overlooked it, but that's fine too. And it is vast. I don't know how many thousands of cards I've got already. I haven't even unpacked them all. Most of them are still in their shrink wrap. And not only do you get new cards, but also Fantasy Flight has decided to use certain mechanics, like in Escape from Dol Guldur that I mentioned earlier, which is one of the quests in the base game. And most people will agree or will say that it's one of the most difficult quests ever. What happens is, at the beginning of the game, one of the heroes gets captured. So you take the hero out. They don't collect any resources. You can't use them. They're effectively caught. And then what you have to do is you have to find them. That's a very simple mechanic. Just reduce the number of people in the party by 1, because you can only have 3 heroes. Huge impact. It's a simple mechanic, but it makes such a big difference. Or you have the possibility in another game that people get sacked. It means they get put into sacks. And for example, Overhill, Underhill, those of you who've read The Hobbit know that the hobbits, that the dwarves were put into sacks by the trolls to be eaten. So if you draw this card, you have to attach it to a hero or a character, depending on which one you draw. And then this card can't do anything anymore. That's a really simple mechanic, but it makes such a difference to the game and to the way the game plays. And then I compare it to the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and I'm like, why didn't they come up with this? Why didn't they do something very simple? Why didn't they have a mechanic like this? It doesn't really take a lot of thinking. You don't even have to print additional cards. If one of the mechanics that you're employing is just get rid of one card, put it to a side, you need to find that hero first. You have to recover your friend. Very simple. Doesn't require anything. Doesn't require any additional cards. Doesn't require any costs. It's just putting in a line. It makes it so immersive. And this is what I really, really love about the Lord of the Rings. It is so varied. For example, in the base game, there is a quest called Journey Down the Anduin, or Journey Along the Anduin. People are not quite sure what it is called. There are different names for it. And at one point in the quest, your party goes onto a raft and travels down the Anduin. Now, the Anduin is a huge, very wide and very long stream in Middle-earth. And you're supposed to follow that stream. But while you're following that stream, your enemies on the left and right of the river see you, of course. They can spot the raft. You're in, like in plain sight. There is no hiding. And they start following you. And how is this done mechanically? Well, at the end of each at the beginning of each quest phase, each player draws one card. So that's either a location or a treachery or could it be or an enemy card, and I think that's about all, or it could be an objective depending on which quest you're playing. And they are put in the staging area, and then you can travel to them, you can engage them, or they will engage you the enemies will engage you depending on your threat level. So the more obvious you become, the more you have been exploring, the further the game advances, and if you haven't played any card effects to mitigate your threat, you become more and more threatening to them, and you become more and more suspicious and obvious to them, so they will attack you. Now, in the Journey Along the Anduin, at that stage, enemies cannot attack you while you're on the raft. You can choose to attack one per round, I believe one per round per player voluntarily, but they cannot attack you. Instead, they build up in the staging area. What does that represent? Well, it represents the fact that they are running after you. They can see you. And they will just basically follow you, and once they know that one time you will have to make landfall, and then they will be there waiting for you. And in addition, the idea is that as you are traveling by raft, and the Anduin isn't exactly a slow stream either, you make more progress. You move through the landscape more quickly. So instead of just drawing one card, you draw two cards. So suddenly you have more and more landscapes, more and more location cards that you travel past. You can't travel to any, towards any. They stay in the staging area. And everything in a staging area has threat potential. And you have to do questing. And if your quest power is ever less than the threat in the staging area, you have to add threat to your own threat tracker, if you like. And if that hits 50, you're done. You lose the game. And this is just a very simple mechanic. Draw more cards. But it is very, very thematic. You can see how you're traveling faster and faster down the Anduin. You make more progress. You see more landscapes to your left and to your right that you're traveling through. By adding more and more of these cards, you have more and more enemies to contend with, because they can see you. They're going to call their friends. So there's more and more and more of them. And again, you see it by the staging area filling up with locations and enemies. And it is a very simple mechanic, but it is just so effective and so immersive. I could go on and talk about the Lord of the Rings LCG for another hour, and I would probably bore everyone to death. So I would like to come to an end now. I tried to give you an overview and it's a very personal overview, and it's very biased. I mean, I'm sure that when I review this video, I'll see that I probably spoke 20 minutes about The Lord of the Rings and only like 5 minutes about Numenera, or that's how it feels like to me, and maybe 7 minutes about PACG, and not very flatteringly either, and maybe 10 minutes about Alien, and very flatteringly. So it's my own opinion that's very important. And each game has its merits. Each game is also very, very different from the other games. You know, like you keep the same party over and over as you progress through PACG. But with Lord of the Rings, you actually try to build the perfect deck that matches the quest that you're going to enter into. So you might change your heroes because you want to have a more tactically based game. You want more fighting going on, or you need more quest power because there will be a lot of locations. You may want to try different types of heroes. You may want to have a thematic deck, like you only want Rohan characters, you only want dwarves, you only want eagles, you want a mixture, you want dwarves and eagles, you want hobbits in there. You have all of these options as you get more and more of those cards. But like I said, the actual part of the game, or I would say 50% of the game, is played when you're not playing the game, but when you're building your deck, when you're thinking about, oh, I lost against this quest. Why did I lose? Okay, thinking strategically about what would I have to change about my deck in order to win against, or to increase my chances of winning against a certain quest. That's what this game is about. It's really about strategic and tactical thinking between games. And then you have Numenera, which is completely random. Unless you play one of the entry scenarios, but other than that, it's completely random because they even have cards that they call randomizers. And Alien is semi-random in that you choose. Well, you can choose, or you pick randomly the avatars that you would like to play as, but then basically the recruiting happens off of a predefined deck. And if you want to, you can mix all of the cards together so that you have, like, if you might end up with only Ripleys from 4 different movies, which I would never do because it just, doesn't gel with me. Or you can play by canon, basically saying only playing film 1 or film 2 or film 3 or film 4, then you know exactly what's going to happen. So it is a little more predictable, but it is simply very tense. I mean, the game is just, I played the first film like 6 times. There was an oh my God moment every single time. There was a moment, phew, that was close every single time. And it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old. And then you've got the Pathfinder game where you kind of have your party, but you kind of grind through location after location after location, trying to get bigger weapons, better spells, and increase your overall statistics. So very much like a very old school role-playing game. So like I said, they are all very different. Very, very different. And I think that there is a target audience for each one of them. And I hope that maybe one or the other of you will find one of these games interesting. I can recommend them all, and what I would like to say is I have no stake in any of these games. I have never been given any copies for free or any review copies. I've paid for all of my copies myself, for all of my expansions myself. And if I had to make a recommendation, and that's really difficult, but for a player like myself who likes immersive storytelling and who likes to think about things strategically, that's where my wargaming aspect comes in, I guess. Lord of the Rings wins hands down, and Legendary Encounters Alien is a close second because of its theme. Because the theme and the way the theme is executed in the game is brilliant. Pathfinder, the adventure card game, is a game I would have really loved to like, but it is too samey, and I'm almost thinking that I will never buy the expansions that I don't have yet, the small pack expansions. And Numenera, Thunderstone, Advanced Numenera is a game that's like for the casual player. if I ever have somebody who says, oh, could I try and play a deck builder with you, I draw that one out and, you know, say this is one way of playing it, because it's so easy to put together. So hopefully you found this enlightening. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, tell me in the comments why. If you've got your own opinions, let's hear them. I would like to discuss these games with you. There are game playthroughs on my channel for each of these games except for Thunderstone, Numenera. Maybe at one point I will do one, but I find it highly unlikely. And next up will be something about the Hobbits. So I'm going to play the Saga expansion, Overhill, Underhill, on camera. And until then, I wish you a pleasant evening and talk to you soon. Bye bye.